If you've lifted your 2010 to 2024 4Runner, it's important to ensure you've got the right supporting mods to make it drive and handle properly. This kit includes Freedom Off-Road's front, upper, and lower control arms with new cam bolts, and it's the perfect supporting mod to your lift kit. The components that are contained in this kit are designed specifically to complement your lift kit and give your 4Runner the proper suspension articulation that it needs to feel safe and controlled on the street or the trail. Just a quick note on fitment here before we dive in. This kit is designed to fit 2010 to 2024 4Runners that are not equipped with the KDSS system. It is also designed to work with lifts anywhere from 2 to 4 inches in height, but it will not work on a truck that has not yet been lifted. Now, the dark side of lift kits is that they can negatively affect your suspension geometry, so your truck may not be able to be aligned properly and thus it won't drive the way it was intended to. Especially if you're going to drive your 4Runner daily, you want to make sure that it can be aligned properly. This kit will give you everything you need to get the alignment on your rig dialed in properly, and will get it driving as well or even better than it did in stock form. Now, starting with the upper control arms, the key feature here is the angle. Now, as you can see, these ball joints are angled quite a bit. So even with that additional height in the front end, the ball joints sit and move the same way as your stock units did. Same is true for the lower control arms. These do have a bit of an additional angle to them, so everything lines up properly. That means there will be no binding or alignment issues even with that lift, and you'll get some additional articulation when you're out hitting the trails, meaning that you can take full advantage of that additional height. Now, both sets of arms come with brand new ball joints, and the ones on the upper arms are greasable to help extend their life. Just pop that cap off and use the Zerk fitting that's in there. Plus, the ball joints are fully replaceable, so if you do manage to wear them out, you can just replace them and get right back out there. The pivot bushings are also uprated versus your stock ones, with higher quality hardened rubber that's about 20% stiffer than your stock bushings. That means less deflection, so you'll be able to stay in control of your truck more easily, even in seriously tough terrain. Also included in this kit are a new set of camber bolts, which are going to help sort out your alignment. These allow for up to 1.5 degrees of positive or negative camber and caster, so you can get your wheels aligned exactly how you want them and dial out any unwanted angle that may have resulted from your lift kit. The upper control arms are made from 1.5-inch diameter steel tubing with a 2-layer E-coat finish, as well as those replaceable greasable OE-style ball joints and the hardened rubber bushings we were talking about earlier. These also do have gussets welded onto the pivot points and at the ball joint for additional strength. The lower arms are also constructed from steel, which has been fully welded and finished in a very similar black coating to help protect them against rust and corrosion. Again, the bushings and ball joints come pre-installed to make your life a little bit easier, and these are replaceable again should you want or need to do that down the line. Overall, it's a pretty high quality setup that you're getting here, and something that many overlook when building their off-road or overlanding rigs. So it's a small price to pay for something that's going to make a big difference in how your vehicle drives. As far as pricing goes, this setup is going to run you about $800, which, though it sounds like quite a bit of money, it's actually a pretty good deal for something like this. You'd likely spend a lot more piecing all of this together separately, and it's not a whole lot more than you'd spend buying new OEM Toyota arms from your dealer, and those don't have the capability or the adjustability that comes with this kit. So if you've got a lift on your 4Runner and you're starting to experience some drivability issues, or you just want to ensure that the capability remains intact, it's worth spending a few extra pennies to pick this one up. Installation gets a 2 out of 3 on our difficulty meter, and the job should take you around 3 hours to complete. Everything here is designed to bolt on without any additional modifications, but it is going to take you some time, so budget that accordingly. Remember too that you will need to get a professional alignment done once you've got everything installed to get that alignment properly dialed in. With all that said though, let's head on out to the shop and we'll walk you through the installation process step by step.
Tools required for this install include a couple different size impact guns, a ratchet, hammer, ball joint tool, clip remover tool, needle nose pliers, 19mm ratcheting wrench, 19, 22, 24, and 27mm wrenches, an extension, a swivel adapter, 19mm swivel socket, 10, 12, 17, 19, 22, 24, and 27mm sockets. What's up guys? Today we're installing upper and lower control arms on our 4Runner, so let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is disconnect our brake line brackets. The one on the upper control arm is a 10mm bolt, whereas the one in the knuckle is a 12. So I've got my 10mm socket to start on the upper control arm, so let's get that out. So first we'll get our upper control arm bracket. So we'll take that 10mm socket to remove this bolt. Then we can pop our bracket out of the way, throw our bolt back, and then we'll switch to our 12mm socket for the brake line bracket and our knuckle. And then same thing, pop that out of the way and thread our bolt back in. Next we can remove the 18mm nut holding our sway bar end link in. So we'll grab an 18mm socket to pop that off. Next we can disconnect our tie rod end. So we'll grab a pair of needle nose pliers to bend back our cotter pin. Next we can take our 19mm socket to remove our nut. Next we can grab a hammer to tap on the side of the knuckle here to break our ball joint free. Now once we get this to pop free, we can remove our nut and get our tie rod end off to the side. Next we can loosen up our lower strut mount. So we'll grab a 19mm socket for our nut side and a 19mm wrench for our bolt side to loosen that up. Next we can disconnect our upper control arm ball joint from our knuckle. So grab a pair of needle nose pliers for our cotter pin, and then we can grab our 19mm socket to loosen up our nut. And now with our nut loosened up, we can do the same thing where we're smacking the side of the knuckle. Make sure you leave that nut on so your whole knuckle doesn't go flying once it pops free. And then we'll just pull down on our upper control arm and fully remove our castle nut. Next we can come to the top of our strut tower and remove our 3 nuts. So we'll take a 14mm ratcheting wrench to do so. I'm going to end up leaving this nut on there hand tight until we're ready to remove our strut. Now at this point you can repeat that entire process on the other side because we do need to be able to move our sway bar to get our strut out. Next we can remove our lower strut bolt. And then we can go back up top and remove that nut. And then we can pull our sway bar up and out of the way. And then once you have your strut out on one side, you can do that same thing on the other side. So now that we have our upper control arm removed, I went ahead and put a caliper hook on our knuckle, connecting it to the coil spring on our strut. I've also got a pole jack resting underneath the rotor just to give our knuckle a little bit of extra support. And then we'll go ahead and start unbolting our lower control arm. Now I'm going to remove our lower strut bolt. I've got a 19mm socket on our nut side and a 19mm wrench on the bolt side. Pull this out. Now before we go any further on our suspension, I'm going to get these skid plates out of the way just to make it a little bit easier to get our control arm out. So I'm going to start up front here. We've got this clip in the middle. Get a clip remover tool, pop that out. And then you'll normally have a 10mm bolt on each side here. We're missing that one. I'm just going to grab this one. And then we're going to switch to a 12mm socket for the rest of these. I'm going to get this back one off first. So we've got a bolt here, and in these 2 holes. And then we have to lift up and slide back to get this off the hook. And that's our first one out of the way. And then on the front one, we've got bolts here and up here. Next, we're gonna grab a 19mm socket and remove the 2 bolts holding in our lower ball joint cradle. Now we just need to remove our 2 lower control arm pivot bolts. So just so that we get our alignment good, I'm gonna take a marker here and I'm just gonna make a mark that we can use to line up later when we go to tighten this down. And this will just be good enough to get you to the alignment shop, get your professional alignment after this. Now I already put marks on the opposite side. So now you're just gonna take a 22mm socket and wrench and loosen this up. Just be careful while you're loosening this, because once these bolts are loose, this thing's gonna swing down on you. And then with that swung down, you can completely remove your hardware. Twist the bolt to get it to clear your axle and remove your control arm. Now, last thing we need to do is remove our lower ball joint cradle from the lower control arm. So I've got a pair of needle nose pliers. We got to remove our cotter pin first, and I'll grab that 24mm socket to remove the nut. And now I'm going to get a ball joint separator tool to hook around our lower ball joint cradle and pop our ball joint free. Now I'm going to take a 16mm socket and just give this light taps until it pops free. So now we're ready to start assembling our new lower control arm. We've got to get our ball joint cradle into place. We've got a new castle nut as well as a cotter pin that we're going to install on here. So now lay your ball joint cradle onto your ball joint. Thread on your new castle nut. And tighten that down with a 24mm socket. And now we just want to make sure that our hole in the stud lines up with the slot in the castle nut. Mine's kind of overlapping a little bit, so I'm going to tighten it a little more. You always want to tighten here and not loosen up to get it to match. And we're nice and centered there. I'm going to stick my cotter pin through, and then bend my tabs. Now we're ready to get this reinstalled onto our 4Runner. So now we're ready to raise our lower control arm up into our pivot points. Now we have new bolts in the kit, so I went ahead and transferred over my marks on my factory bolts that I made to the new ones so that we can line that up. Again, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be good enough to get you to the alignment shop to get it professionally done. So now I'm just going to raise this up into place. Start getting my bolts through. And then once you pick up your washer from the other side of the room, you can put that and your nut on. Get this the rest of the way through. And now I'm just gonna leave these loose for now while we reassemble the rest of our suspension. Now I'm gonna swing my lower control arm up, and I'm gonna get my lower ball joint cradle bolts in place. Now once you have both of those bolts threading nicely, take your 19mm socket and tighten them down. Next, we're going to push our strut back into place, reinstall that lower strut bolt, and then get the washer and nut on the other side. Then grab your 19mm socket and wrench and tighten that down. Next, we can install our upper control arm. One thing important to note, make sure you go underneath of your line here, and then take your long bolt, get your washer close to the end, feed that up, and get it lined up and push your bolt through. I'm just gonna move my knuckle over here. And then I'll get my washer and nut on the other side of that long bolt. And just like the lower control arm, I'm gonna leave that loose so it can still maneuver around until we tighten it down at the end. Now we're gonna thread our new castle nut onto our upper ball joint and take a 19mm swivel socket to tighten that down. And then you just wanna tighten this until your holes line up, just like on the lower ball joint. And it's lining up pretty well there. I'm just gonna throw our factory cotter pin back in through that hole and it'll clip around that nut. Next, we can go up top, remove the nut from our stud on the upper control arm, and slide our bracket over. Thread that nut back on, tighten it down with a 10mm socket. So now I've got a pole jack under our lower control arm. I've jacked up our suspension to put a load on it, and now we can go back and tighten down our bushings. So I'm gonna start with the upper control arm with a 19mm wrench and ratcheting wrench. Tighten down that bolt. And then you can reinstall your two covers, pushing the push clips into their holes. Now we're going to tighten down our lower control arm pivot bolts. So first I'm going to get a wrench on the bolt side here, line up my alignment marks, and then I'll get a 27mm socket on the other side and tighten it down. So right about there, our marks are lined up. So I'm going to hold this side and tighten the other side with the 27mm socket. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side, but with a 24mm socket and wrench. Line up your alignment mark and hold it. Now we just need to reinstall our skid plates. So I'm just going to swing our front one back up into place, and I'm going to thread all these bolts in with my 12mm socket. And I'm going to get my back skid plate. This hook's going to be going into this hole first. And I'm going to tighten all of those down with my 12mm socket. And then we can go back up front, put in our push clip in the center, and then you have those two 10mm bolts. We were missing that one. And then take a 10mm socket and tighten down your 2 bolts. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the Freedom Off-Road front, upper, and lower control arms and cam bolts for 2 to 4 inch lift for your 2010 into 24 4Runner without KDSS system. Thank you for watching, and for all things 4Runner, keep it right here at extremeterrain.com.